everyone, welcome to CresTV, your regular roundup of all things Crestron and what's going on in, I would say, the UC industry, but we're going on a weird and wonderful tour away from the UC industry today to something new. Normally one guest, but one's never enough. So today we've got two guests for you, and not only guests, but also a customer. We're going to be talking about a customer case study here that was put through recently, and I'm very excited about this. A, because I know nothing about it. I'm well outside of my comfort zone, and this isn't my usual kind of stuff. So I'm going to be learning as much as you all are watching this. So let's bring out our guests for the show today. In the middle of your screen, you see Durgesh Singh. We'll have some interest on that name in a second. And Rob Taylor. Now, Durgesh has got a nickname, and we're going to see who brings the nickname out first when we're talking about it. So, Durgesh, you're from Nucleus. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and Nucleus and what you do.
Hi, Neil. We're a London-based integrator. We work on three sectors, so commercial, residential, and now military with Rob. So we cover three very different industries, and we're obviously a Crestron dealer, so that's why we're here.
Very, very cool. Now, Rob, he teased military there, and I haven't actually said what the project is yet. So, Mr. Rob Taylor, tell us about 4GD and bring us into what we're talking about today.
Well, thanks for having us. So yeah, we at 4GD build training facilities for primarily the infantry and specialised forces, both in the US, the UK, and sort of globally. So we build hyper-immersive facilities to replicate sort of the contemporary experience of urban combat and all that entails.
This is so, again, it's way outside what I normally talk about. So again, I'm completely new. So we're talking, you guys put together an urban, I had to write this down, an urban training facility for the parachute regiment. And again, this is a global, so this is the UK parachute regiment, part of the Ministry of Defence. How do you go about that? Well, where do the requirements for this go? We want, the email comes through, please, Rob, can you supply us? And then it goes to Durgesh, can you please, supply us this solution? How do you even start on something like this?
So it's sort of a bit of a journey actually with the client. It sort of works two ways. There's obviously a significant growth, which is rather sadly been sort of brought into stark sort of interest in the last 7 or 8 months in Ukraine. But there's a growing move away from the sort of wars of the past 20 years, in Iraq and Afghanistan, into the sort of urban space. And I think there's a sort of large expectation, as has been proven in sort of Kiev, Mariupol, and some of the cities that we've all sort of come to know in Ukraine, that the next fight is going to be in the urban. So the British Army is sort of having a big push into that space. We effectively then work with them to look at how we can better or best improve that training. And one of the areas they wanted to look at was typically urban training in the military is sort of done on large training facilities across the United Kingdom, same in America. But there was a sort of view that it would be good to start to bring some of those training facilities into where the soldiers are actually based, so that they're their actual garrison locations. So effectively there was a requirement that came out, what could be achieved, and it effectively became a bit of a journey. And it was a three-way journey actually between both what the client wanted, what we were looking at sort of creating, and then also what was technically possible with our audiovisual partners, Nucleus.
Very cool. And it's interesting. This was all going on, just again to set the scene. This was all going on, pre-lockdown, I think, wasn't it, or during lockdown? And Durgesh, you're normally in the kind of Crestron home kind of realm, doing really high-end homes, and then Rob comes to you and says, "Hey, can you help us put this together?" I mean, Durgesh, again, how do you take this, and how do you take that requirement and put that into nuts and bolts and products and a solution to meet that? Where do you even start with that?
Yeah, I mean, the first time Rob came to me, I was like, okay, we deal with bedrooms, yeah. We deal with boardrooms, and now Rob's asked me to deal with battlefields. So I'm like, okay, we can add another B to it. But the first time he came to me, I was like, you just take a step back. You're like, wow, no one's asked me to do this before. And then you break it down into what are we actually trying to do? Well, we're trying to provide a technology-based solution, integrating different products, whether we source them or we build them and develop them ourselves, integrate them into one unified solution and give the client a great user experience. And that is true for both, for all three, the boardroom, the battlefield, and the bedroom, right? So that's what we're trying to do in all three markets. So, that while sometimes people believe these three are very different, actually, the skill set you need to do all three is pretty much the same. It's all audiovisual, integration, networking, programming. The skill set is pretty transferable. You just have to be kind of open to it, and not be bogged down by, I need to find a specific product that's used for that. Think about, products that you might have used or come across and how you're going to use them differently, or how you're going to be asked for a manufacturer to just build the same product, just slightly different. And all of a sudden it applies to Rob's requirements and his ideas.
It's funny, you're making it sound very mainstream, but Rob, give us an idea on one of the features, or what. Give us some. I know, again, obviously there's lots of NDAs and there's lots of secrets here, so again, let's not give away any sort of trade secrets here. But the feature list for this must have been, quite different, Rob, surely.
Well, I was going to make a point. Yeah, before we go into the sort of details, one of the things I was actually thinking is, Durgesh was talking, was there's a sort of beautiful circle to this, though, because obviously when we started the conversation, it was, let's see what we could do with audiovisual to create a training facility. But what actually we sort of realized was, well, actually the sort of homes of the 21st century are all primarily going to become audiovisual enabled. So ironically, it became the other way around, where actually we started to look at how can we make the training facilities more representative of boardrooms and bedrooms. So have that sort of beautiful circle. So in terms of actually, it's a good place to start. What we wanted to do to create that sort of immersive nature was look at just the first two were sort of audio and visual, sort of what are we going to do in the sounds perspective? So how can we increase the immersion of a facility to not just have, the odd gunshot effect going off, but actually sound and feel like a real battlefield? And then from a visual perspective, we're looking at things like lighting, both visible and infrared, because you want to be able to train both day and night. So effectively bringing both the two functions of AV into it in terms of to create that battle space. So, a good example would be the infrared capability. That one of the things we wanted to really push the boundaries on was improving night training during the daytime. And that is effectively being able to train using night vision when it's not dark outside. And obviously to do that, we wanted to be able to flood to a varying degree the facility with infrared light. And it's something that then we worked with Nucleus on how we could achieve that.
Wow. Get it, just completely. Durgesh, have you ever had that before? Any requirements from for that as your normal day to day?
No. I mean, you see, the funny thing is like now you've got people looking to put infrared light to improve the quality of their CCTV cameras from outside.
Oh, of course, night vision kind of stuff for CCTV.
Yeah, people do it now to improve the quality of the CCTV footage at night. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the infrared as bright as possible. Now, what we're trying to do here is dial it down progressively over the iterations of the soldiers running the facility, so we can give them a lot of infrared light, so their goggles work very well, and then dial it back so that then they they get acclimatized to working in pitch blackness, and then eventually turn it off. So then their night goggles are working at their most extreme sort of power. So it was kind of like thinking things like that. And then obviously we looked at this to give you an idea how we deployed this. We thought, okay, we need to control the ambient light for turning lights on and off in simulating what rooms or hotel rooms could be or apartments, and then obviously controlling the infrared. So we thought, okay, well, we could use infrared bulbs and we could use normal bulbs. We thought this doesn't work globally because you've got different voltages and different standards. So we looked at products that we could use over the network and PoE powered lights. So we use PoE powered visual lights, and we use PoE powered infrared lights. And we actually then approached the manufacturer and got that blended into one device, because one thing we realized is we don't need the visible light on at the same time as the infrared. So then that reduced the cabling by half, and the efficiencies in the programming also by half in terms of that API to control that.
Wow. And again, you're talking a lot about, programming and APIs. I guess, I was going to say, what was the main reason for Crestron? But I'm probably hearing a lot of it, I think, now with regards to the fact that you needed that granular capability to be able to program and to get down and to go to that detailed level that, and again, PoE lighting, again, you're not going to get from an off-the-shelf domestic solution. It's the sort of thing that we here at Crestron are really good at.
Yeah, Crestron came to us straight away because obviously Crestron is used for military and government applications all over the world. It has that robustness. It has the company behind it. It has the history of reliability, and that's what it's known for. But also is of course known for its massive flexibility. So us choosing that route meant that anything that was possible that, you know, Rob came up with, Rob's requirement list is always longer than what is possible today, but eventually we will make it possible. And Crestron is the right thing for that, because as you say, it's an open book platform. It's up to us to put the work in, and you can get it to pretty much do anything. So it doesn't limit us going forward with a selection in the platform that, you know, we're trying to do something today, but we can also use it for the foreseeable future, because it's not limited by what it can do. It's limited by our skill set and the team skill set.
And I think one of the key things that we found from the client base was you've got the 20th century sort of generation are now in service. You know, it's the kids of the 90s and 2000s that are brought up on PlayStations and then latterly iPads. And effectively, one of the things that we found was getting a system that was easily controllable, intuitive, but also sort of took some of that advantage forward was quite critical. So something that you could just throw a young soldier and they could understand it automatically, which is a sort of a big jump forward, because I think quite a lot of the systems that are typically in service were sort of engineered in the 80s, 90s before that sort of ability to create really intuitive interfaces. And I think one of the key things for me that I experienced as a sort of customer experiencing Crestron was the ability to say, well, actually, you know, if that button is just moved a little bit this way, or make the instructor's life considerably easier. And being able to do that and not being tied down with, no, that button has to be here for the following sort of arbitrary reasons.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess the flexibility. And again, I was going to ask about, you know, the installation. You know, presumably you had challenges like this when you're installing it. Again, Diggy was talking about the power, and also the again the ability to flexibly change, as you said, that interface as well during the installation.
Yeah, go on, Rob.
No, after you.
Yeah. I was this is all quite cutting edge for the military and for our client base. So they don't really understand. They know what they want, but only when we're at installation and they obviously want to have a peek at what we're doing, they will come along, and then they'll start to get a grip of actually what is possible. And they're giving us ideas which are very valuable information, because they're giving us to a point from a user that's going to use the system. So there were things that we changed on the UI within days of developing new code, deploying it, testing it while we were on site programming. And that's a testament to what you can do with Crestron, as long as you have that development process all lined up and all your version control and everything. We're able to change things, add things quite dynamically, whether it's buttons or actual new features that we actually just thought of while discussing things with the soldier, because we didn't get much time with the actual people using it on the ground until we were actually on site, and then they were poking their heads in and talking about it, which was it's always useful. It's not, you don't have a long history of tens of years of doing residential and commercial AV of like user feedback to base what you're doing on. So get any time with the client is beneficial.
Yeah, and I think there was some things we just, as Durgesh was saying, there's some things we just weren't expecting, and actually there were some really efficiency gains during that period. And one of the things that we've sort of learned on that delivery was actually having a bedding in period. Because Crestron enables the adaptation of the user interface, it actually makes a bedding in period worthwhile, which is something that our military customers are really keen on, but it hasn't ever really happened. Normally they get a system, it's delivered, it's coded. What they get is what they see is what they get. With us, they sort of started to go, well, if you could just move this button here, we could actually then hold this system in a certain way. When we're delivering debriefs on the televisions, it's much easier if we could just intuitively press a single button. And they were sort of impressed with the speed that we could do that. And that's actually now been built into our future process of having a bedding in period with the user. It's genuine. It may not seem it from a sort of residential or retail space where obviously that sort of interface happens probably more regularly. But I think it's genuinely quite new for the military to be able to go in and go, actually, do you mind if we just tweak this, or do you mind if we just tweak that? And you get an exponential benefit. It's probably a couple of days' work from our end, but it's 6 months or a year of having an easier life from their end, and that's quite critical.
I was going to say, so obviously this is now in and working. It's fully deployed, fully operational. You were talking about, getting it up and running and learning that kind of betaing and beta testing way up. But this is fully now operational. What are they doing now that it's installed? Again, are they learning, and they still adapting and still changing and still modifying this in the field as they're going?
Yeah, we've seen some really interesting uses, sort of things that we didn't expect to be used as much that are being used loads, things that we expected to be used loads that aren't being used as much. And we're then able to adapt the sort of system to suit the things that are being done frequently. I mean, some of the sort of usages that we've seen, some of the really interesting scenarios that they've managed to achieve were probably actually beyond what we expected them to be able to achieve, as such as the sort of flexibility of the system. And yeah, from an intuitive perspective, we're going in increasingly less frequently. There's an element of train the trainer in terms of user one then teaches user two, but it's getting to a point now where it's sort of getting into service. People are getting used to that sort of touch screen interface, and I think it's really sort of opening the door to what could be done in the future.
Nice.
Yeah. To give you some more insight on that, Neil, because it's something we haven't touched on actually, and it's an important thing and the space is not a rigid space. So any boardroom that anyone builds or a high-end resi installation, the bedroom is the bedroom, the living room is the living room. This space is not a rigid space in terms of its size, in terms of its walls, in terms of its doors. It's completely physically customizable. So the challenge becomes that you have to build a UI that dynamically can change when the physical layout of the footprint of this training facility changes. So it can be one massive room, it can be 20 small rooms, and it can have 5 doors or 1 door or 10 and anywhere in between. So our system and our UI has to be customizable by the user every time they change a layout. Again, the layout is not only dynamic but changeable by the customer. We don't have to be there to change a layout. So that is something that's very, very unique about
that.
Installation.
Is hugely powerful, because again, normally you're like, okay, you want to make a change, yes, we'll come out, day of programming or whatever, and make that change. But the fact that the customer can actually go and make those changes, that's hugely powerful.
Yeah,
so without again, we always love a little bit of a tease. We always love a little bit of clickbait. So again, I know that this is a government Ministry of Defence kind of project. But can you tell us? Yeah, again, this is installed. Where do we go now? Again, without kind of getting us all fired quite literally, or shot quite literally. Pardon the pun. Again, what's next? Where do you take this from where we are today? And again, is there anything you can tell us about where the future holds for this?
So there's we're currently working on an upgrade to the facility that was reported a couple of months ago, which actually was sort of built out of the success of the initial deployment, where we realised that Crestron, we had pushed it, but I don't think we'd pushed it right to its limits, and I think there was sort of more functionality that we could get. So we are now deploying a completely bespoke piece of hardware built by 4GD. In the sort of shape of what can only be described as robotic targetry, that is then going to be controlled by Crestron within the user interface. And that's been a really interesting journey on terms of taking a purely bespoke, from scratch piece of robotic hardware, and then working with Nucleus to make sure that the interface was as intuitive and as simple as the existing rollout. So you're adding a huge degree of functionality, but you're not increasing the complexity of the user interface significantly.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, you're in a unique space there, because usually Crestron dealers and integrators, we develop code and drivers for a product. Here, we're helping develop the product, helping develop the API, and once that's done, we then build the driver for the API that we help develop. So we're in the challenge is there, but we're a unique opportunity to almost build a Crestron native product as close as possible, because we can design the UI to do anything we want to do, because we're part of that team with Rob in building those products.
Very, very cool. Again, I think it's fascinating to say, well outside of my normal day-to-day. I've been at Microsoft today doing a presentation on Microsoft Teams Room. So again, this is talking about urban facilities, training facilities for the parachute regiment is completely different. So I think it's awesome. Durgesh, if there is any other customers that want to do this, or obviously your normal day-to-day job, where can they find and can contact you? What's the best way to contact you and hook up with you, Durgesh, to get the next urban training facility or residential or enterprise deployment?
Yeah, so obviously all our training facilities are part of the 4GD solution. So if they want one for their house or if for their own private army, they can come to Rob and I at 4GD. And if they want sort of the norm calmer stuff, cinema rooms, video conferencing, they can come to our website at nucleusav.com.
Awesome.
And contact us through that.
And Rob, what's the best way to contact you? In a bunker somewhere, or?
Yeah, I was going to say carrier predictions. No, I think sort of either 4GD on YouTube or 4gd.co.uk.
Very, very cool. And I think only I slipped up and called Durgesh Diggy once. So I think that was on me. You all did very well. So brilliant on that. Durgesh and Rob, thank you ever so much for joining us on CresTV today. And again, a fascinating project. And again, hopefully the viewers will find this interesting and we'll hook up for more information on that. And thank you all for joining us for this session. Again, a little bit something different, a customer and how they're taking Crestron equipment and using it in different use cases. Again, what goes into a home or to a boardroom or a bedroom, as Durgesh said, can go into the battlefield as well. We'd love to hear from you if you've got some other great use cases and applications for Crestron equipment. Do make sure you hit the subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends. CresTV is the place to be, and we'll catch you on the next one.